So tonight is kind of a really fun night for a couple reasons. One, I get to introduce you to the ORM. We're going to be using a object relational mapper called Sequelize, and it will basically allow us to work in our database using only JavaScript. We won't actually have to write out the SQL commands anymore, and we'll be able to interact with that. That's one thing. The second thing is that we're using an existing front end. So we're going back to our week 15 folder where we already built out the entire blog application. So now we get to see what we've been limited to in just the front end, being able to do that in the back end as well and have that connected into a database. So we're going to see that. And then the third thing, which is coming later this week, is on Wednesday and Thursday, Ryan is coming back and he's going to teach you how to set up user authentication. So you're going to have an actual login screen, username and password that works, that's secure, that's saving into the database, that you can actually know what user is doing which thing. So this week might be the most exciting one in terms of your capstone, because this is the week that we hope the dam breaks, right? That we get to that point where we're opening the floodgates and it's just like everything that you're seeing us do in class is a direct impact to your capstone. So that's the goal that we want to get you to, because this time next week, we've got that capstone check-in lingering, right? Not this Thursday, but the next Thursday. And so the only main real requirement for this upcoming capstone check-in is that you've got something going on in a database. That could be an API call that you're making to your own database. That could be an API call that you're using to a third-party service. But this is kind of the last capstone check-in before graduation, right? Where you're going to be showing all of this off. And so now is the time to say, I'm taking everything that I'm learning in class and I can apply that in, right? I can have that database work. I can have some information where I hit the save button, whether that's a contact form that gets filled out or whether that's form to add in a pet to or whatever it is, right? This is now your time to say, can I take a user interaction, save it in the database, and also display that information on some kind of screen? So that is the goal. At this time in the program, one-on-ones start to tick up, right? And those one-on-ones become less of a therapy session and more of a, here's my code, this is what I'm trying to do. I've been banging my head against the computer for 3 days. How can I make my code do this thing that I'm trying to do? That's where the one-on-one sessions end up going. The other thing that I will say is it is okay to come to a one-on-one behind. It is okay to show up and say, this is what I'm trying to do. We learned how to do that 4 weeks ago, and I'm just still struggling with this JavaScript, or I'm still struggling with, I don't get an API, right? That's when we can pull out the football diagrams. That's when we can start doing little code snippets to review it and then apply that directly into your capstone. So definitely utilize those one-on-ones either with me or with any of the TAs. All of those links are in Canvas. With all of that said, did anyone have a pressing question or something that they want to talk about before we dive into the blog project and getting that back end set up?
I have a question. When we were sending data back through Beekeeper to our Postgres database,
Yep.
and we were doing that with to-do task. We were just sending the body of the task. So that was just one element. What if we have to like send an array of objects? For example, like in my case, like movie reviews thing,
Yep.
like the movie, the ratings, and an array of movie genres all together.
So JSON will stringify that for you. The problem isn't in the fetch, because in the fetch body, as long as it's JSON, you can send as much data as you want in there. What you'll want to do is map that out into your database, right? So one thing that we haven't talked a ton about is database design yet, but basically thinking through it as a Excel or a Google sheet, right? Like, okay, I need to store this data in a table. How do I go about storing that? I'm going to have a users table, and that users table is going to store things like email, password, first name, last name, that kind of stuff, right? But then, okay, I also need a movies review table where I'm going to store the user ID. That's going to be relational data. But what else do I need to store? Well, I need to store the title of the movie, or maybe an ID of the movie. And maybe I have a movies table. That's a third table. And then I also need to store their rating from 1 to 5. And then I'm going to use multiple rows. So I may have 10 rows all with the same user ID, but with different movies and different ratings for that. So tonight we are going to work with the blog project, where we're going to be storing in the title, the tagline, the content, and an image for the blog post. We'll do that tonight and tomorrow. But then hopefully that will get some gears turning for you in terms of, well, if I make a new blog post, I'm saving in these 3 form fields. That gets saved in the database, and then I pull those form fields back out if I ever needed to like edit those ratings or that kind of stuff. So hopefully you won't have that question by the end of tomorrow night's class. But if you do, definitely ask it, and we can spend some time working in your exact code base, because that is what we'll be spending a lot of next week doing. Next week, I'm out of projects. Next week is all about you guys coming to class and saying, this is what I'm trying to do. Can I screen share? Can we work on that code together? So you'll have that opportunity as well coming up next week.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. Great question. Any others? Okay. We are going to go ahead and dive in. Project setup tonight is going to be just a little different because we're dealing a front end we've already done, but setting up a back end from scratch. So similar steps. You guys have been through this before. Don't panic. But we are going to start in our C5 My Code. I'm going to go to my week 15 to my day 1. And in my day 1, I've got my blog folder. So I'm going to go into my blog. I'm going to go to my node modules, and I'm going to delete that whole folder. Now, if you did not follow along, if you seem to remember that you didn't completely finish off the blog project, I am going to put a file in the Zoom chat that you can use. You can use my copy of the front end if you would prefer to not use your own version of the front end. If you are using your version of the front end, click on the blog, make sure your node modules folder is deleted, Command C to copy that blog folder. We're going to go back over and make our week 19 folder. 19 out of 24. Can you believe it? We are nearing the end, light at the end of the tunnel. In our week 19, I am going to make a new folder called day 1. And then I'm going to do 2 things. I'm going to paste in my blog front end, and I'm going to rename this to blog-front end so that we can keep track of it. I am also going to create a new folder called blog-backend. Then I am going to open both of those folders in VS Code. And then I will pause and give you guys a second to catch up. Our front end should be a copy and paste. We're stealing everything we did from week 15 and reusing that. Our blog backend, we just created a blank folder. There's nothing in there yet. So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to drag them both to VS Code. No file setup or no file creation yet other than that blog backend folder. I'm going to share our live share. That is in the chat. I will give you guys a second to connect, and then we will go through project setup steps part 2.
Max, I just have a question. So our back end, we do, I was doing the front end when he was going over that.
Yep.
I'll make a new folder in the day 1 and title that blog backend, right?
Yep. With a dash in between instead of a space. And then there's nothing in that folder. We just open that blank folder in VS Code.
Okay, thank you.
So we're doing two new things this cohort. One, we are going to tackle how to do a file upload, because that's a very common question in a capstone is, hey, I want a user to be able to upload a picture when they're setting up their user account or creating a post on my site or something like that. So we're going to probably cover that maybe if we're lucky tonight. If not, definitely cover that tomorrow. And then the other new thing that we're doing is Clerk, which is a user authentication package and service. That's going to let us set up our logins a little bit more smoothly without having to worry about security and password hashing and that kind of stuff. So that will be what Ryan is covering on Wednesday and Thursday. Anyone have questions on this before we move on to setup part 2?
We posted the blog copy, well, the blog in day one in the front end, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Shay, did you have a question?
Just give me one moment.
I was just making sure I'm doing right. So just putting both backend folders in VS Code, and that's it. Both.
Correct. Okay, so in our backend, we've got a little bit more setup to do here than usual. What we're going to do is pop open the terminal. If you do a control and a tilde underneath the escape key, that is the keyboard shortcut to open the terminal. What we always want to make sure is that in the terminal, we're in the right spot. So when I pwd, I want to make sure that I'm not just in the day one folder. I want to make sure that I'm in the backend folder. If I'm not in the backend folder, abort, figure out what's going on, CD down into the backend, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Make sure you are in that backend folder before you start running any commands. Tara, we used the week 15 day one React front end. We copied that and pasted that into our week 19 day one and renamed it from blog to blog-front end. Open that in VS Code. And then our blog backend, we made a new folder from scratch and opened that in VS Code, but have not done anything in it yet. And if you would prefer to use my blog front end instead of your blog front end, it is in the Zoom chat.
I can't see previous messages. Can you resend it, please?
Boo, I thought I turned that on.
I can do it, Max. What do you need?
Just the zip file, if you can download that and repost it.
Yep.
Thank you. Caitlin is our TA this week, by the way, if you have any questions. Okay. Now that I am in the terminal, and I will Batman slap you silly if you are not in the blog backend folder. Always, always, always make sure that you are in where you think you are, because every command you're running is running in wherever your working directory is. So you should not be in the day one folder. You should be in the blog backend folder that is inside the day one folder. If you are in the right spot, we are going to npm init-y. That is going to create the package.json. And we are also going to npm install. And we're going to have a couple old favorites here. And we are also going to install 2 new ones. We are going to install a package called Sequelize, and I will copy and paste this in Zoom in 1 second. And we also, nope, that's it. We're going to use this new one called Sequelize. That will have made our node modules, our package.json, and our package lock.json. Then we are going to create a file called server.js. We're not going to put anything in there yet. we're going to head over to our package.json, and we have to add in the start. So we're going to say start is going to npx nodemon our server.js. And we're going to put something new in our package.json that we haven't done before. When we're using node, we've been using the require keyword, right? We've been saying const express equals require express. Const cores equals require cores. We've been going through that, right? Well, that's different syntax than what we use in our front end. What do we use in our front end in React? We use import whatever from, the name of the npm package, or the React file that has the component in it. So that's what we're going to switch to in our backend. Instead of using the require syntax, which is called common.js, we instead are going to use the ES6 module syntax. That is the import and the from. So Node now natively supports that newer ES6 module syntax. We just have to tell it, hey, this is the type of the imports we want to use. So to do that, I'm going to come down below this main with the comma, and I'm going to put in a word that says type, and we're going to say module. That's going to allow us to use that newer import syntax instead of the require syntax. Okay, done with our package.json. All we added was the start line here, a comma at the end of this line, and then our type module right here. Go ahead and save that, close out of that. We are done there. Now we got to get our server set up. So instead of const express equals require express, we're going to import express from express.
Max,
Yes.
not afraid if I'm gonna be a little embarrassed or whatnot, but you're going a little fast for me. Not gonna lie.
Is anyone else feeling the same way? Okay.
Okay, I'll just rewatch the video.
So package.json, only 2 lines that we added: a start, npx nodemon server.js, and also the type module right here. So everything we've done in here so far is just a npm init-y. Then we npm installed express cores pg and sequelize. That is in the chat. Then in our package.json, our type module and our start command right here, and that's everything. Kenny, it is okay if you have the capital. No, I'm taking that back. It should be, this can be a capital E, but you shouldn't have those curly braces in there. That's importing at a different level. We definitely don't want curly braces on either side of this. Danny, what's up?
So when I'm trying to write the start, it keeps putting it in red and orange, and I just don't understand. I'm going to share screen.
Go for it. You might be missing a comma on the line above it, but let's find out.
Yeah, and I was just like, I don't understand what I was doing.
Okay, so our
I know I
type,
still have to write. Yeah, I
we're
still had to
gonna
put that in, but
do-
all of a sudden I was like, why does it keep doing the start?
and then we just need a comma here,
Oh,
and that will fix this here.
good Lord. Thank you.
Yep.
And what
JSON
else
is
do-
one of the pickiest data formats, and so like anything that you get wrong, it's not like a JavaScript object where Prettier's like, oh, we know what you meant, we'll fix it for you. JSON is like, you have one quote out of line and the whole file blows up on you.
All right, thank you. Is there anything else I had to do after that?
Nope, you are all caught up.
All right, thank you, Max.
You should have a node modules, Taylor. That is when you run the npm install command, that is what generates out our node modules for us. And if you need that list, it's at 550 in the chat. We good? Okay, not hearing any objections, so we will move on. We're done with our package.json. We can close that out. In our server.js, I'm going to go fast here, but I'm going to give you a chance to catch up. So red light here, listen to what I'm talking out, and then you can catch up from there. So we've got our express.
Can you share your screen first, please?
That
Thank
might be
you.
helpful. Thank you, Tara. We are importing express. We're getting our cores, and you'll notice the syntax is very similar to how we do our imports in React. We are going to get our server set up. We are going to tell our server, server.use. We're going to tell our server that we're going to have some JSON coming in. We're going to tell our server that Corwin, if it's a little different, that's fine. As long as you've got the start in there and the packages are listed, that's all that matters. We're going to server.use our cores. We are going to server.get our first rec res. That's going to res.send back something like status online. Doesn't really matter what you send back here, just a way to test it, make sure it's working. And then we are going to do our server.listen on 3000. We'll do it on 3010, so there's no conflict. 3011, just to make sure that it's not conflicting with whatever we did on Thursday. So whatever port you choose here, there are some things you shouldn't put it on. 80, for example, is the default port, so you want to be very intentional about putting it on 80. We're just going to put it on 3011 because React is very good about changing a port if it's already used, but Express is not. So I just picked a number that seemed to be out of the way. We're going to do our console log. Server is running on port 3011. And we should be good to go. You notice I have not started the database yet, because we're going to do that a little differently. So I'm going to save on my server. I am going to npm start in my terminal. I am going to pop open Chrome and make sure my localhost 3011 is working. I get my status online, and I am good to go. So green light for you guys to catch up. If you are reading all of this code and you're like, I get it, copy and paste away. This is the first time that you're hearing me say copying and pasting is actually okay on this. If you feel like typing out the syntax is helpful, that is also okay. So green light on catching up. I'm going to start a poll just so I know where you guys are at, making sure that you've got plenty of time. The only thing that we did, everything is in server.js. When we were done with our server.js, we npm start in the terminal. And after we npm start, we go over to Chrome. We go to localhost 3011. Once we are connected in there, you are caught up and good to go. Kenny, cores, cross-origin resource sharing. So basically, the origin, which is our front end, we're going to make a fetch call from our front end to our back end. That is from a different origin, right? Our back end is separate from our front end. So we basically have to tell our back end, no, it's okay. You can respond to other requests that are coming in from a different origin than the back end itself. So yes, it is basically a security mechanism that says the API, the browser won't let you talk to another API unless that API gives the browser permission to talk to someone else. And yes, basically to communicate between the front end and back end, it's very similar to what we do with this express.json. We basically say, hey, Express, the front end is going to send in some JSON. It would be nice if you could just parse that out for us so we don't have to deal with a string. It will automatically take care of that.
Max, I have a little issue. So I did the. Can I share my screen for a second?
Yeah, go for it.
So I did this and then I took out what was making it. I had to express up there.
Yep.
And I took out, but it's not showing in my browser.
Can I see your browser?
Yep.
You have to manually open it. So go to a new tab. React opens it for you. The backend does not. So localhost 3011. There you go. Anyone else need help or just another minute? Okay. Oh, yep. You got it, Corin. If your video is on, you can just like nod or raise your hand or whatever. I'll go back to sharing my screen just in case it's helpful. Last step, go to Chrome, pop open a new window, manually go to localhost 3011, hit enter, and if you get your status online, you're caught up. Okay, we are going to head to Beekeeper. When you get to Beekeeper, you normally get this connection screen. Double click on your local DB. Doesn't matter what you have open, what tabs is in, what database it drops you down into. All we want to do is open a new query tab. So the little plus in the top right, and we are going to create database blog. Then go ahead and hit that run button. And what you should see is 0 rows affected down here. As long as you have that, we can go up to this drop down and hit the blog option, and we should get this information schema over here on the left. Plus, to open up a new query tab, type in create database blog, go over to this drop down. You might have to hit the refresh button, change the drop down to blog, and we're all set in the database. We aren't creating a table yet, and we're going to see why in a minute. Databases obviously need tables before we can load any data into it, but we're going to see a new way to connect into the database. Everyone good? Okay. We are going to create a new file. But before we do that, we're going to put it all in a folder. So I'm going to say new folder, and I'm going to call that folder DB. New folder, not a new file. Make sure you're tracking there. Once you have that DB folder created, what we are going to do is create a file that goes inside that folder called db.js. Make sure you are creating it inside the DB folder. Now, inside that db.js, we've got some setup to do. So we're going to import Sequelize from Sequelize. Notice that it is a capital S that I'm using here. So make sure you're being consistent on that. It's a capital S in the first Sequelize. It's a lowercase s in the second Sequelize. That casing is going to matter. Then we are going to connect to our DB by making this Sequelize instance, and we're going to type in all of the connection details that it needs. It turns out that Sequelize works with a bunch of different SQL databases. It works with MySQL and Postgres and Microsoft SQL and Oracle or SQL Server and a lot of different ones. So we need to tell it what kind of database we're connecting to. So we're going to say, hey, we're connecting to Postgres. Then we're going to put in the username of that you are signed in on. If you do not know what your username is without spaces, command space, type in Postgres, hit enter, and you'll see out of all of the databases, one of those databases will be your username. So that is the username that we want to use here. I cannot tell you how many times people are just copying and pasting my code, and it says I can't connect to the database, cannot find database with a user of HackUpstate. Do not just put HackUpstate in here. Make sure that it is your username in here without any spaces. Once you've got that in there, we are going to say we are connecting to that at localhost on our local computers. The port, the default for Postgres is 5432, and we want to connect to the blog database. But we don't really know if that connection worked or not. So what we're going to do is create something called connect to DB, which is going to be an async function. And what we are going to do is try to authenticate with the database. And if we did authenticate, we can console.log. Oh, sorry, typo there. Console.log connected to database. But if there are any issues, we can catch an error and console.log, console.error out the error. And we can also console.error panic. Database issue. Then we need to actually call our function connect to DB. And finally, we are going to export out the DB so that we can use it on other files. Kenny, it is case sensitive, so make sure that you do a capital S here and then a capital S right here as well. So this is a little different. We don't really know why we're connecting differently, but hopefully all of this is a little different, but not unsettling. Hopefully this is kind of making sense so far.
I just have a question, Max.
Yeah.
For like our capstones
Mhm.
having to do this like back end thing.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, it is a requirement that your capstone have a backend and be connected to a database. And after this, hopefully, like this is the last new thing that we're learning of how to connect to the database. So this project will be a really good boilerplate to follow for your capstone. I'm going to do a poll just to make sure everyone's caught up before we continue. Oh, my poll has disappeared. Where did it go? Okay, maybe I'm not going to do a poll. Oh, here it is. Okay, most of you guys are in. We've got a problem. Our blog right here is not actually printing out connected to database. Well, why not? We just made this file, but we didn't tell it, hey, go run that file. So we're going to go to server.js and we are going to import our DB from the DB folder and the DB file. I'm going to go ahead and save, and I get an error because I can't spell. Authenticate. When I spell authenticate properly, I should get connected to database down in my terminal. At this point, I would be utterly shocked if one person did not get an error. At least one person. Server.js, we added our import. And then in our db.js, we make sure that we spell authenticate properly. Did anyone not get it connected to database? Really? All of you on the first try? Shay. Okay. Okay. So in your path, be careful because we're not just importing it from DB. DB is in its own folder called DB. So we actually have to say, go to the DB folder and then import the JS file that's inside of it. And that fixes it for you.
Yeah, I was wondering what I did wrong. Appreciate it.
Yep. Corwin.
I'm gonna share my screen. I guess that's the easiest
Go
thing
for
to do. It's kind of all jumbled in here. Let me.
You might have to stop your screen sharing and restart it. Zoom glitched.
Oh. It always does this. That's why I like WebEx.
Ew, how dare you? There we go. Okay, you I think have the same problem that Shay had. Make sure that in your server.js that you didn't just use the nope. Never mind, I take it back. Cannot find module. What module is it trying to find? It's not going to tell you. Oh,
That's
okay.
what I'm saying.
So, why is there a front end in your back end?
Oh, bro. We were doing that in the front end.
No, but this is all front end code.
Yo, I
And
didn't
it's
realize
in your
I was
back
doing
end.
this. Yeah, I didn't realize I was doing that. And
Yeah, you're gonna need to fix that. Or go in a
I can
breakout room with Caitlin, and Caitlin can try and help you
I
detangle it.
can copy it and paste it.
Well, the problem is that your front end code is in your back end folder.
I really don't understand how I just did that.
So that's why you're getting an error here, is because this node modules is conflicting with the node modules that's supposed to be in your backend folder.
All we did was copy the blog project, right?
Into a front end folder.
Oh shit. Okay, see, I think I just named them the wrong thing when I
So here, let me just look. Can you drag that over for me?
Oh, my bad.
Okay, so yeah, your front
Forgot to
end
get
is
these
chilling
references.
here, but there's nothing in it.
Yeah.
So we're gonna delete that one. We're gonna go here and put it out here. We're gonna. Is it not gonna let me do that? Oh, it's not gonna let me do it because it's the same name. So front end, move that here. Then
Bro,
in here, we have to oh, that's not going to work because I'm not npm initted.
my bad, Joe. I knew something wasn't right. I was typing. I was like, something's not going on.
This terminal isn't in the right spot. Now it is.
All right, see, this is what I meant earlier. I was like, yo, my code does not look like his, and I thought I thought I was tripping out. This looks more like what you were doing earlier.
Come on. Okay, and now you're caught up. Your server JS. Oh, you have to. Okay, so you're connected there, and then here, do an import the DB from db.js. And Postgres only has one S in it, and localhost is ending with a T and not an R. And you're connected and good to go.
Thank you.
Anyone else need help? Yes, Shay, the front end should be from our week 15 folder. Everyone else got connected to database. No one else needs help. Okay. Now we've gone through all of that work. What is an ORM? An object relational mapper is what is going to take our SQL code, our relational code, and map it into a object. And then it can also take an object, convert it to relational SQL, and put it into the database. But the problem is it doesn't know what our database looks like, and it doesn't know what our object is supposed to look like that it's now going to put into the database. So think about it as like a train model. What is a toy train model supposed to do? It is supposed to model out what the bigger version of it is going to look like, right? So we're going to use that as we're going to use a model. We're going to go into our db.js and we're going to make a new file, and that file we are going to call post.js. And inside that post, we're going to say, hey, go grab the data types from sequelize. Make sure that is an S, a plural S. Then we are going to say, hey, we are going to have a post. That post needs access to the database. And once it gets into the database, it is going to define a new model. And that model is going to go into a table called post. And then we're going to put some fields in here. We're going to say the data type is an integer. We're going to say that this is the primary key and that auto increment is true. These three things are what we do anytime we use an ID, and we always want to have an ID on a table. So auto increment is like what we did with serial, and then primary key, we have used that term before in our create table syntax. We are also going to add in things like the title, which is going to be a string. We're going to add in our tagline, which is also going to be a string. We are going to put in our content, and this one is not a string. This one is data type of text. So that way we can have more than 255 characters. We are also, we're not going to use these quite yet, but we're going to set it up. We're going to do a string, which is a blob, an image, which is a blob, and an image type, which is going to be a string. And then finally, we're going to export our default post. Flash said, why image type? The image itself is going to store the data of the image, right? That's going to actually contain all the pixels and all of that kind of stuff. The only problem with that is web servers don't really know what kind of image is that. Is that a JPEG? Is that a PNG? Is that some PDF that someone uploaded? So that you would think that the data type would be stored in the image itself, but it isn't. So when we upload a file, we have to basically take that data type out and store it with the data itself. And then when we go to pull that data back out and show the image, we need to know what file format they basically use. This blob is like text on steroids. A blob doesn't have a limit to how much you can store in it. It is basically Postgres is saying just whatever you throw in there, I'm going to remember. And then whenever you ask it for that back, I'm not going to do any kind of formatting on it. You're not going to be able to query against that. You can't filter it. It's just data in, data out. So it's just a blob of crap that gets put into the database. Now, normally, images are not recommended to store in databases, and here's why. Databases are good at storing millions of rows of tiny little bits of information, and that's why we always try and go for the smallest one possible, right? Here, we're going to do a string. Well, what's the difference between a string and text? A string can't have more than 255 characters. Because the database is limiting it down to that, it means that it can do where queries and return results and retrieve that data much quicker. Sometimes we need more than that 255 characters, though, which is why we are using this text. A blob is very similar to text, but it's meant to be more data formatted. It's meant to be like, hey, I'm just going to take whatever that image is and shove it into the database. So it's not necessarily human readable text, which is what a data type text is. A blob is just supporting that I'm going to take whatever that file content is and dump it in here. Image resolution isn't really, you calculate image resolution, you don't store image resolution. So basically when you pull the file back out based off of however many pixels are in it, that's how you can do resolution. Image URL, you're going to see how we handle that tomorrow, so hold off on that question. But it will play into everything that we need to get set up. So a lot of APIs do support images. However, they aren't commonly stored in databases. What normally happens is that we store that image on what we call the FS, the file system. And that is kind of living out here with our JS files or server.js or db.js. We normally put those files in another folder called public or called images, and then we just send the images back that way. The problem is that's going to make Nathan's life hell in 2 weeks when he comes back in, because when you start deploying those applications, every time you deploy, that image folder is going to get overwritten and deleted. And you're going to go, well, what happened to all of my images? Well, we deployed a new version of the backend. That backend has a different file system, and it's going to overwrite all the images that you uploaded. So what we are going to teach, what won't get overwritten when you deploy the application every time, is your Postgres database. Any information that gets saved into that will still be saved after you deploy, which makes sense, right? So we are purposely saving images in the database to make sure that when you deploy this application, those images will save the way that you expect them to. But just know that in a production environment, we would use some kind of other cloud service like Amazon S3 or Google Cloud Storage, or something that is meant to store a large number of files. We would use that instead. Unfortunately, using something like S3 or Google Cloud Storage is 300-400 lines of code and opens up a whole separate can of worms. So we're going to store images in the database, knowing that, hey, you probably aren't going to have several thousand images in your database, at least not for your capstone, but just keep that in the back of your mind of, normally we don't store images directly in the database, we store them on another file system. Then in the database, we store the path to that image in the file system. That makes sense to everyone? Okay, so I am going to head back to my db.js file, and I'm going to put in 2 more lines here. We're going to say import our post model from post.js. Then we need to give the database access. Oh, nope. Bad. Okay. So look at this flow. We're going to our post file, and we're importing the entire model that is coming out of it. What is coming out of that model? It's this whole function. This whole function needs access to the database. Where is this database coming from? The DB is right here, and that database is linked up to the SQLize connection that we set up here. So we add in our import, we set up our model so it has access to the database, and then we're going to do one more thing. We're going to, in our database connection, we are going to db.sync. In other words, sync in whatever our model information is with the database. Really cool thing that just happened there without us even knowing. I'm going to go to my beekeeper, and I'll pause after this. I'm going to refresh my list of all of my tables and look at what got created. we now have a posts table. And if we look at that, we've got our ID and our title and our tagline and our content. Well, how did that happen? We didn't write any SQL. We didn't write a create table, right? Everything that we did was in our JavaScript. Well, take a look at what happened in our terminal. Create table, if it doesn't exist, posts. Oh, here's our ID, our serial, and our varchar, and we've seen all of that before. What happened was SQLize took all of the model information about the post and in our JavaScript, and using JavaScript, wrote out the SQL command for us and ran it in our Postgres database. That's kind of cool. So at this point, if you are caught up, and I'm going to stop here and poll and give you guys a chance to catch up. If you are caught up, you should be able to, in your Postgres, make sure you hit the refresh by the entities button. If you hit that refresh, you should have a post table here. If all you have is information schema, you need to debug a little bit. So we're going to take a breath and help there. Corin, make sure that integer is in all caps and that it is data types, not data type. So you want to make sure that it is data types up here, plural here, and data types plural everywhere in your model. And if it still looks like that and you need help, you can share your screen. Data types dot integer, not a comma. Period, not a comma. Brandy. Brandy, go ahead.
Hear it. Sorry, I didn't hear it. I have an error in my terminal that says panic.
That's a good thing.
Database issue. Oh, okay.
No, it's not. Share your screen.
I didn't think so, you know. Okay. Where is it? No, I don't understand. Oh, that right.
Okay.
I don't think
This
that was the
is
right
my
one.
code, not your code.
Okay, hang on, give me a second.
You want me to go to Shay and come back to you?
Yes.
Okay. Shay, what's up?
It's just a quick question. Somebody else had asked in the chat, but y'all probably went over it, but I was just wondering in the DB folder for the post.js, line 13, the image type or the data type blob. I'm not sure what blob was.
So think about a blob
What was
as
that?
like what you're taking the data and just blobbing it together, right? So a blob is like the database knows how to deal with strings, but strings are limited to 255. The database knows how to deal with text, right? It's just a longer version of the string. But then the blob is like, well, what kind of data are you putting in? It's not a number, it's not a string, it's not text. It's this like complicated data type, right? And so the blob basically tells Postgres, don't worry about the data type that I'm putting in. I'm just going to blob something into you. And when I ask for that data, you're going to give me the blob back out, and then I will handle the blob on my own.
So you're using when the data type is not a string or a text or integer?
Correct. And so there's a list of data types, and this is a good reminder that whenever you use a new package, you need the documentation for it as well, if you're not following along with me in class. So you'll see we installed Sequelize. We already did that step. You'll see the data types coming in here. You'll see that we defined it. And then the number 3 is what we're going to do next, right? But if you take a look in the documentation over in the model basics, they have a data type section, and they'll show you, hey, you can do a string, you can do numbers, they're, doubles that support decimals, all of that information down here. And then there's another one in the separate, and down at the bottom, you'll see that there's blob. Hold that thought though until tomorrow, because that's well, maybe we'll get to images tonight, but we're working our way up to that. Brandy, don't tell me you fixed it.
There we go. No, I didn't fix it yet, but I figured out what the problem is.
Okay, do you want help or do you want to work on it?
I'll try to work on it.
Okay. Okay, bye. Anyone else need help? I think we're mostly caught up. Everyone should have at this point in their Beekeeper over on the left-hand side, their posts table. Okay, so at this point, it's important to kind of know where we're at, right? We have our backend all set up. We're connected to the database. We are using Sequelize to connect to the database, and we've defined our first model. So think about that model again, is how Sequelize in our JavaScript knows what our SQL in our Postgres is supposed to look like. So Sequelize is acting just like the PG package does, but it's more JavaScripty. It doesn't make us write the SQL directly. It's going to write that SQL for us. We're going to see how that works in 1 second. We have our backend and our database, kind of part of the backend, connected to each other. What we haven't done is given any love to our front end over here. So I am going to go back to my server.js, and we need to think about our CRUD operations, right? Our create, read, update, delete. Well, it's kind of hard to read anything from the database unless there's something in it, which is why it's CRUD instead of RCUD. Plus, everyone loves CRUD. So we're going to start with our create. We're going to say, hey, the server is going to get a post request to come in. That is going to go to a thing called new post. New post is going to do an async rec and res. And we're going to res.send something back because we never want to have a request come in that we forget to respond to. Now that we've got that set up, I don't really know what data is coming in from the front end. So we got to go to the front end to set that up. So I'm going to scoot my server over. I'm going to head to my SRC. And you know what's probably a good reminder to look here. I'm going to go to my localhost 3000, and I don't even have it running yet. Okay, I got to fix that. So I'm going to my VS Code. I'm going to right-click on my package.json, open an integrated terminal. I'm going to npm start, and I get an error that says command not found. Well, why not? Because I deleted my node modules way back when we got all of these files set up. So I need to go here and npm install before I can start. Okay, once my install is done, I can npm start, and that is going to put, eventually, my blog back up and running. Now, this is wired up to local storage. We don't want to use local storage because if I deploy this app to the internet and make a post, no one else is going to see it. So what we need to do is connect it to our backend. We want to get this tied and all synced up to our full stack backend, making those API calls. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go to the new post page, and my new post page has my title, my content, and my author. That conveniently lines up with my post model, which has a title, tagline is different, and author. Okay, we're gonna have to fix that in a second. Let's have our front end line up with our back end. So I'm gonna go in my front end. I'm gonna go to my SRC. First of all, did anyone have trouble getting their front end up and running? I should pause there. npm install, npm start should have your 3000 up and running. Okay. In my front end, I'm headed over to the new post.js, and I'm going to change some things here to match my backend. So I'm going to say, get this out of the way. I'm going to say, hey, instead of the title and the content, I'm going to change my author to my tagline. Then I need to update that up here. Okay, but look at what all this is doing. This is getting the existing post from local storage, it's adding it in, and then it's doing something down further with setting that back into local storage. I don't want any of that to happen. So I am going to, after my post, I'm going to come in and delete everything down to that curly brace down here. Local storage is gone. We're ripping it out. We're putting our database in instead. And now what we're going to do is we're going to say const response equals await a fetch. And you notice my await is red. Whenever we use an await, we need to tell it, hey, this function is async. Then we can fetch, where we fetch into our local host 3011. And we're going to our new post. And what are we sending to our new post? We are sending a method of post, right? Because our post needs to line up with our post right here. And we are going to send in some content type of application JSON. And where are we sending that application JSON? We're sending it in the body. And I said I'm sending in JSON, so I need to stringify it. And then we are going to send in all of our post details right here. If all of this is working, I should be able to console log on my back end the rec.body and get all of my post details in my backend. Last step there to test, and then I will give you guys a break. I'm going to type in ABC, some content, a tagline, and hit create post. Nothing should happen here. But if we take a look over in our backend, we should see the stuff that we typed in. I'm going to pause there, give you guys a chance to catch up, because I know that was a lot of code. All we did in our backend is we threw in this console.log rec.body. And then in the front end, we deleted out all of our local storage and changed this over to be a fetch request instead. And if everything's working, go to the front end, go ahead, fill out your new post form, hit that save button, and make sure that you can see that data in your backend. If anyone needs help, let me know.
Max, my await is giving me an error with a red underline.
Add in the async keyword.
I did.
Okay, never mind. Share your screen.
Here, it's giving me this.
Async goes on create post, not on new post.
Oh, gotcha. Thanks.
Yep.
I got a module not found.
You probably need an npm installed. Does it tell you what module it hasn't found?
It says, I'll copy and paste it. It says
Or
require
just share your
step,
screen.
and it's
It's
just an
probably an
NPM.
issue with your import, actually, now that I think about it.
All right. I deleted node modules out and then reinstalled it.
You're in the wrong terminal. Kenny, you have to fill out the new post form and hit the submit button. And if you hit submit and it shows what you submitted in your backend terminal, then everything is working. If you don't see anything in your backend terminal, then you missed a step somewhere.
I launched it from SRC instead of new post.
That's fine. It doesn't really matter where, as long as you're in the front end. But see, this somehow is the somehow in that file mix-up, you change your front end to be starting the back end. This needs to be React script start. And if we start it, maybe think about it. Take your time. There you go. What? What did you copy and paste?
I copied what you put in the link, ain't even gonna lie.
Maybe hold on. Maybe we just need to, yeah, it was still thinking. Okay. So you shouldn't have any of that down there. 'Cause. 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 '
I don't know if it's because I'm on a beta, but like a lot of my code has been like kind of tripping lately.
Okay, so you're caught up there.
All right.
Palash, yes, I changed author to
Okay.
tagline everywhere in the code.
Yeah.
Amberlin,
I believe I missed a step.
share screen.
Okay.
I know it's torture for you guys to go through it, but when you miss a step, chances are someone else missed a step, and me answering your question may help someone else out. The share
This
screen
is
didn't go through.
Oh, I didn't press okay. Sorry. You say it yet?
Nope.
No. I don't know. It's not working. Let me just bring it back over this way. Sure.
Palash, I only changed it in new post, the author. I didn't change it in all the other files yet, but we will eventually get around to that.
It's saying there's screen sharing has failed. So I guess I can't.
That's lovely. I would try leaving the meeting, quit Zoom, reopen Zoom, and see if that fixes it.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. I'll be back.
Kenny, share screen. Do you have a console log rec.body in your backend?
Hold on.
This one right here.
I don't think so. No, yeah, I don't have.
Throw that in and then see if that fixes it. After you put it in, you'll have to hit the save button on the front end again.
So I changed author to tagline everywhere, and now everything's broken.
That's okay. We're gonna wire it back up.
Okay.
Yeah, it worked.
Cool. Amberlin, any luck on screen sharing this time? Sometimes Zoom just gets cranky. You're muted.
Sorry. No, it didn't work. Let me try it again.
Make sure you like fully like go up to Zoom US at the top and down to quit instead of just closing the window. That might help, but unfortunately, sometimes like a reboot fixes it and other times it doesn't. So you can always share a live share link with me for your front end and back end, and I can pull it up that way if the screen share doesn't work.
Okay.
This is a lot of steps. I know that. This is your time to ask for help, to get caught up. Hopefully that we're, other than just racing through it and trying to get it to work, we're using the time to go back and go, why are we doing this step? Can I articulate what this step is? Because believe it or not, being able to say what step you're trying to do makes it way easier to write that code. So in an interview, they're not only going to test you on, hey, can I write that code? They're going to ask you, what code are you writing? They're going to try and keep you on the right track, right? So you want to be able to look back at this code and say, hey, why are we doing this? Can I articulate in this section of the code that we are fetching from the front end to the back end, and we're including the information that is in that form field? That's what we want to aim for. Brandy, share your screen.
There we go. Oh.
So the problem. Nope.
Also, I don't know if this is a problem or not, but it keeps saying
This is fine.
No. No, not that. There we go. It keeps
Oh, that's
saying
fine. That's a
as
weird
iPhone.
coworks. That's a weird coworks thing. Common space.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
I
Not rude.
think that this is VS Code being fickle because your server is starting and it
Mhm.
is like getting the post table information. So
Mhm.
I think you can ignore this. If you actually close this and reopen it in VS Code, that error won't be there when you reopen it.
Okay. All right, I will try that.
But can you fill out the form, hit the save button, and see it in your console, in your terminal?
Say that again.
So we put this console login.
Mm.
Go over to your browser where the front end's running.
Oh, I couldn't get it to open in my browser either. That was the other issue I was having.
Okay, so let's focus on that. Here, all we need to do is open an integrated terminal and npm start. Okay, so we have to install first. And then we can start. And yeah, Corbin, it should be in the VS Code terminal, not in your front end. The front end is sending it to the back end. The back end is getting it and putting it out in the back end terminal.
Okay.
Oh,
I
and
closed
then
out of that.
Y on that.
Uh,
Okay,
Yeah.
new post. Type in something in each one of them. And hit create post. Okay, so your front end code isn't caught up quite yet. So take me back to your front end. So what we did was in our new post, we deleted out all this local storage stuff. And then you've got to put your whole fetch in here, and then you'll be caught up.
Okay.
Anyone else need help? Again, use these breaks to say, can I articulate what we're doing? It's not enough to just go along for the ride. It's not enough at this point to just say, oh, I'm following Max. You have to, at this point, say, what is our objective? What are we accomplishing by writing this code? We are doing a fetch to take the form information from the front end to send that information to the back end. What we will do after the break is take the information in the back end and send it into our database.
Can I try sharing my screen one more time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yay.
Okay, thank God. All right. This is mine and this is your area over here.
Okay, you are really close. At least on the one error I can see. If you give me a remote.
Yes.
We used await here, so we've got to use async up here. That put that error away. So we're going to npm install. Whenever you have a command not found, an npm install is probably going to fix it.
Oh.
And then an npm start.
Yay.
Just need to take this out because it's hijacking your capstone.
Yep. And
So you're good there. We're gonna do a
Okay.
new post. We're gonna type in A, B, C and hit create post. Nothing appeared to happen, but if we come over here and in our new post, we console.log the rec.body. Now when we hit create post, we should be able to see the data that got sent in, and you are all caught up. Good work.
Thank you.
Last call for anyone who needs help before the break.
I mean, are posts supposed to be showing up whenever we hit create a post?
No, when you hit the create post button,
It's supposed to go to the back end, right?
it just goes to the back end and shows up over here. That's it. That's all we've got wired up so far.
I was making sure I was not going crazy.
Not going crazy. The form isn't taking anywhere. It's not showing anything up. We just are wiring up to the back end so far. Anyone else need help? Okay, go on break. Be back at 7:25. And if you still aren't caught up, make sure you take a break, raise your hand, and I can help you get caught up after the break. 7:25. See you guys soon. All right. I know this is going fast. That's normal. Trust me, this feels like lightning speed right now. Once you get a hold of this, everything just goes so much quicker, right? This is just a matter of repetition, getting confident with what you're doing. So again, even if you are feeling like this is flying by you, make sure you're identifying why are we doing these steps. We will take time at the end to go through and put in numbers and document some of this out. This is your example project for your capstone. Everything that you need to know is going to be covered here, right? So this is your chance to say, do I understand it? Not necessarily can I do it. Can I do it is the next step. Do I understand why we're doing this step is the important thing right here. All right. So we're over the hump. We've got all of the setup done. We've got our front end taking the form data, sending it to the back end. We're all on the right steps. Now we just need to save it into the database. So that's what we're going to do. Kind of cool, though, that because we can go up here and get access to our post in our backend, what we are able to do is then use that post to create everything in the rec.body. Now, because we're using the post from the database, we also need to go to our db.js and export out that post that the database has access to. So we're going to add in on our db.js that export post db right down here. We add in that post, and then we are able to use our post to create a new one based off of whatever is in the rec.body. So I'm going to throw in an await here because our database is always asynchronous and we actually want it to wait for that post to go through. And then I am going to hit my create post button. Look at what happened over here. It said insert into posts, and it has all of these fields in here. And what's that doing? Well, if I go to my beekeeper and I double click on my post table, look at what just showed up in our database. If you have this row in your database and it has all of the information from the front end, you are caught up and good to go. If you don't, raise your hand. And if you're still working on it, wait to vote in the poll. Otherwise, the poll is up. The goal here is that we should see whatever we typed in here show up in our beekeeper here. And we had to add in this post in the export of the db.js. And then in our server.js, we were able to add in our post up here and also able to create based off of whatever information was in the body. Danny, what's up?
I do believe I forgot to use the word await, so I'm going to put that in and then see if I truly need help.
You probably do.
Oh.
I don't think that's your problem.
Oh, do you want me just to share?
Yep. And Corin, raise your hand and I'll come to you next. Okay, post create. We're gonna throw in that
Approve.
we're gonna throw in the await just so we don't forget it. And then in our db.js, you've got the post coming out. And then is your front end, can I slide over?
There you go.
Thank you. Your localhost 3011 new post, stringify the post. Okay, take me to your browser.
All right, hold on. I'm gonna just I screwed it over here. Okay, maybe not. Come on.
It was thinking about it.
Yeah, it's like there it is.
There you go.
Whoop.
Okay, so we hit the create post button here. It appears nothing has happened, but the network tab will actually show you it is sending that data. So let's go to Beekeeper and hit the little refresh button down here. And there is your
Okay.
post.
Awesome, thank you.
No problem. Corin, still need help?
Yeah, it's not giving me an error. Like, and hold on, I'm just gonna share my screen.
Sure.
I'm not necessarily getting an error in my code. I think I might have missed a step in linking it to Beekeeper though. I do have the I did go through and create the blog thing in Beekeeper though.
Yep, everything looks right here. So I'm gonna go to your I can't see where I'm going. Can you take me to your browser?
Yeah, I could yeah.
Is it this one? Nope.
I got a couple.
Here,
My bad.
I got it.
All right.
New post. So we got it. Did you go through these steps?
Yeah, so it shows up like in the terminal in my VS Code backend, but I don't know.
So
It is
failed to fetch. We've got an
it was-
error. The error says post is not defined. This post here has to get imported from the DB. Let me just make sure. Capital P post. Okay, so you're good there.
Wait. I think my post.js is in capital.
Yeah, I think you're gonna get away with that. So no error message there. I think you were just missing your import post on your server.js, because if we go to your Beekeeper now and drag that over so I can see it.
I gotcha.
There you go. Now if we go to your posts and we refresh, there is your data.
Nice. All right, thank you.
No problem. Anyone else need help? How are we feeling about this? Are we feeling empowered? Do we see why we would use this? seeing it's a little bit easier than writing the SQL once we get our model set up. Well, now we've got our C of our CRUD done. We've got our create done. Now we need to get it to read from the database as well. So hard part is over. Hard part of all of tonight is over. Everything gets so much easier from here. SQLize is all set up. Data's going into the database. We're sending stuff from the front end to the back end. All of that is good to go. So we've got one more thing. We got to get the read working, and then we can get into the update and all of that stuff down the road. So I am going to close out of my db.js, and now I need to make a server.get that gets all of my posts.
Share your screen.
Thank you. That is going to RecRes. And what we're going to send back is all of our posts. And check this out. In just one line of code, we can await our post.find all. And if I go back over to my front end, and I'm going to try and juggle this so you can see both of them, I can go to my app.js, nope, my home.js, and instead of doing all of this local storage stuff, instead, I'm going to delete that out of my use effect and then say const make API call is going to be async. It is going to const get a response from awaiting a fetch to my localhost 3011. Go get my posts. Get the data by awaiting a response.json. Then set my posts to my data.posts. Have to make that API call. I go back to my homepage and look at what I've got here. Here's my ABC, my sum content. Where is that coming from? That is coming from my beekeeper. So once you get that code done, go back to your homepage manually, right? Delete out the new post in the URL. Make sure you can see the post that you just created in your form. Most of the code we just did is in this make API call right here. And we also added this server.posts over here. Start another poll, just to know where you guys are at. Now you may notice there are a couple inconsistencies. We have something that says invalid date and my by is missing. We'll fix those in a second. There's one more minute. Anyone who needs help, raise your hand. We have not fixed that yet, Kenny. We'll go back and fix that in a second. That's safe to ignore for now. Everyone good? Anyone need another minute? Okay. So now let's take a look. We've got our ABC. We've got this invalid date. It's almost working, but we made some changes, right? We put in that thing called tagline, and the date might be a little different. So I'm going to pop open my console. And the first thing I notice is each child in the list should have a unique key prop. Okay, well, that's a pretty easy fix. Down here, I put a key on it, but before I was using each post.timestamp. Well, if I look at my data, if I pop open this array, now I've got this created at and updated at. That's Sequelize generating that for us. Sequelize put in those two columns. That's kind of helpful, but you know what's even better? I've got an ID here. So now I don't have to get hacky with a timestamp. Instead of using timestamp, I can use my ID instead. So I'm going to save that. I come over, I refresh. And now it's mad about this because this doesn't have an ID. But you know what? This is all placeholder content. I don't want that to show up anyway. So I'm going to delete that out completely and just leave it as an empty array. Now, when I come over and refresh, I've gotten rid of my error message. So I changed my key to use my ID instead of a timestamp. And then I took out my placeholder content up here for my posts. Okay, that's fixing some of it, but I also have problems with my by and my invalid date. So let's fix some of that. I'm going to command click on the word post here, and that is automatically going to pop open my post file for me. Now, I don't want to use the data.author anymore. I want to use the tagline instead. So that's going to get rid of the author, swap out the tagline for me. And then finally, I've got this invalid date. Well, I don't have a thing called timestamp anymore, but I do have one called updated at. So if I change mine to updated at, you'll notice that my time has updated. Change tagline to author, take out the word by, change your date to an updated at. And now we can actually go in and hit a new post and say, second post, more great content. Check me out. Hit create post. Oh, we got another bug to fix. But if we take that back to the home page, you'll see that that shows up. And not only does that show up there, but if we go to our beekeeper and refresh, we can see this is in here. So hopefully you're now making a connection to your capstone and thinking, oh, I've got a contact form on my capstone, or I've got a add a post or add a pet or save a movie review, or sorry, I'm blanking off the top of my head on all of your capstones, but hopefully you're at that point now where you're going, oh, I can fill out a form. I can make that form on the back end. Oh, I'm sorry, on the front end, make an API call with all of that data inside of it. That data is then going to use the model to save that information into the database. And then I'm going to do a find query that's going to send that information on my home page or wherever you want the data to display to my front end. Anyone need a minute before we keep going? I think, Corwin, that you didn't update your tagline in your form, and that's what was causing the issue. So check your new post and make sure everything is tagline instead of author in there. That was my bad. I didn't line up the form fields. And then you'll have to make a new post as well because the old one isn't in the database. Okay, we've got 2 more things to do tonight. We will comment this out and then we will open it up for a little bit of capstone time. So one thing that I forgot to put in is in our front end, in our new post, after it does this work, we don't actually need the response because the server's just sending something back that's like, all right, I'm done making that post. So in my new post, I can take out that const response. That will get rid of the warning that Kenny posted in the Zoom chat. And then I want to do something. I want to navigate back to my homepage. Before, we did something with a window.location. Using window in React, though, you kind of want to be careful with it because what that window.location is doing is overriding React router and telling the browser itself, hey, you've got to go reload the homepage. But we don't really need it to reload the homepage. It already has the homepage in memory. All we want to do is change the route to that. So in order to do that, what we do is we say import navigate, import use navigate from our React router DOM. And then after it's done making the post, we can say const navigate to is using our navigate. And because it is, we can navigate to the homepage. Little trickier than using a window.location, but this method is much more preferred. This is a way, we know we can use link tags to change our routes, but this is a way that we can programmatically say, hey, after the API call is done, go to this link. So a couple more steps, but you will notice because we are now using that navigate to, when I do my new post and I say third post, and hit create post, how instantaneously it switched us over there. The browser didn't need to reload the page. It didn't do anything hacky. It went through and properly changed out the route instead of having to reload the entire app when routing to a different URL. Kenny, was your light bulb routing or was it with the data flow? Good. We like everything light bulbs. All right. We've got one final page to wrap up here, and then we are done. If we go back to our post.js, the link that we were using was using the timestamp. We don't want to use the timestamp anymore because we've got IDs on everything from the database. What if 2 people at the exact same time make the exact same post? That wouldn't really happen, but hypothetically, it could cause an issue, right? So we're going to change out our link here to use an ID instead. Then we're done with our post.js. We can go ahead and close that out. And we're going to head back up to our app.js because our app.js is expecting a timestamp in the URL. We just changed that. We said we're not using a timestamp anymore. We're using the ID. Now, we're going to go to our read page. And again, I'm leaving these tabs open as a breadcrumb trail of what we changed. Home.js, we changed our, nope. Sorry. Host.js, we changed our link to use the ID. In our app.js, we changed our timestamp to our ID. And then finally, in our read.js, we've got all of this code for the use effect for local storage. I don't need any of this. So what I'm going to do, delete this out. And I'm going to say const response is going to await. Nope, sorry. Const make API call is an async that is going to make the API call here. We are going to say const response is awaiting a fetch. But we run into a problem. When I go to my localhost 3011, I can get in my backend, I can get a new post and I can go get all of the posts, but I don't want all of the posts. I just want one singular post. So what I have to do is say server.get. I'm still getting a post, but only one particular ID. We async the rec and the res, and we res.send back a singular post. And this time we can say await a post.find one. And what is the one we want to find? We want to find one where the ID lines up with the rec.params.id. Where's this coming from? That's coming from this ID right over here. So I scoot that over. Scoot this over so you can hopefully see it. And we say, go get the ID. Slash post slash ID. And then get the data from awaiting the response.json. Then you can set the post from the data.post. And we have to find our timestamp and change that to our updated at. And then on 28, this is our delete post. I'm going to just comment that out for now. Now we click on read more and we get the exact data we're looking for. That's the last thing we're doing tonight. That was a lot of code, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes to catch up on that. In the back end, we only added in this new server.get so that we could get one post by the ID. So we didn't have to go get all of the posts and then find the right one. We let the database do that matching for us. Then on our front end, we updated our params right here that are coming from the router to say use ID instead. We deleted out all of the local storage logic and instead used that new endpoint that is getting the ID from the params of the router. Then we do our JSON, we set the post in. We change our array down here to say ID instead of timestamp because we want this API call to run when the ID changes. And then we came down here and changed our timestamp to our updated at so that it was using the information that Sequelize was generating for us. And finally, we commented out everything inside our delete post. And if all of that is working, what you should be able to do is go onto your homepage, click on read more on any one of them, and get the content that you are looking for. All right, how are we feeling? Anyone need help getting it working? Corwin.
My for some reason my new post is kind of freaking out.
Okay, share screen.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to request remote. Your new post has, okay, so it's saying 61. It is freaking out down here, and that's usually because here we go. You have 2 new posts. So be careful if you're copying and pasting from my code where you're copying and pasting. So we're going to take out this new post. And okay, so we fixed that. Then what we also did was this is in read.js. So if we open that, we are getting our ID here from our ID that's coming in from the params. The params are coming in from the router. We also are going to go to the post to get that ID so it lines up with the backend. And then finally, hopefully, finally on 28, we commented out all of delete posts because we haven't wired that up yet. So I'm going to save. So that's all good. Let's go see what it's doing in the browser now. So I'm gonna hopefully this one. Yep. I'm gonna do new posts. Say CBA. I hit create post. And it is mad about a value somewhere. So because that was in the new post page, you've got tagline and tagline here, but down in the form, you still have author here. So we got to fix that. Now, if we hit create posts, we get no errors. And if I hit read more, it takes me to the correct page. Good work. Blush.
My posts are not showing when I hit read more.
Share your screen.
So every time I do read more, it says hold your horses, which is like when there's a post. um here, oh, that's yours. So here's mine.
And give me a remote. Thank you. Data set post, data post, ID in our app.js. We've updated the ID, so that's good. We're setting the post. If there's not a post, okay. Come over to their back end. Aha.
Ooh, gotcha.
Now, if we read more, oh, I thought that was it. Let's check our. This is our read post ID. Post. Because there's only one of them. There you are.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. And Berlin.
I believe I missed a couple steps.
Okay, share screen.
Okay. And this is mine.
Okay, let me request. So first things first, we're getting a crash when it's inserting. So let's fix that. I'd like to know why it's crashing though. Failing row contains null title tag content null. You're gonna null value in column ID of relation posts. Okay, that's kind of interesting. Create based off of the rec body. Let's look at your front end in the new post. We are passing in stringified post, new post, title, content, tagline, title, content, tagline.
Missed that.
Tagline. Okay, let's see if that helps. So I come over. Now this is a good note for everyone. When your server crashes, if we make a fix in the front end, the back end doesn't know to restart. It's still crashed. So there are two ways of fixing that. We can either hit Control-C to stop it and then up enter to restart it, or we can just make a change to the file and hit the save button, and that will trigger the reboot. So now we come in, we say A, B, C, hit create post, and we still have a failed to fetch. Post, title, content, tagline. Okay, I don't know what's going on with that. So what we're gonna do null value in column ID of relation posts. Okay, we missed one thing here. We also need the auto increment to be true. That way it will generate the ID for us, which is why it's mad. It's trying to create a new post, but it didn't know, oh, I can just come up with the ID on my own. So ABC, create post. Oh, come on. Oh, I forgot to reboot. No. I think because we missed this after the table was created, we're going to have to go to Beekeeper.
Okay. Bring it over there. Hold on 1 second.
Yep, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take this table and drop it so that it is cleared out, and then we're going to restart it, and that way Sequelize will create it properly with the auto increment on the ID. So we do our A, B, and C and hit create post. No errors, yay. Content showing up, yay. Read more brings you not only to the right page, but also has all the content showing up. So you are all caught up.
Thank you.
Very impressive for being stuck that far back to be able to have all these steps done.
Thanks.
Anyone else need help? Who's ready to review every single step that we've done tonight? Can I get a no? Can I get a yay? Can I get an 807 and I'm going a little crazy because we've got 50 steps we got to go through. Okay, let's give it a try. At any point, stop me and say, that's a word. I don't know what that means. Give me a definition of that. Or say, you're writing a step and I don't understand what that step is. Or say, I didn't think it was happening in that order. This is your time to give me feedback, right? So terminology, very important. The order that all of this is happening, very important. Come off mute and scream bloody murder if you have a question. We start in our backend. Our backend, 1, does imports from npm packages. 2, imports sequelize setup. Where does sequelize setup come from? That comes from our db.js. What does our db.js do? It 3 brings in sequelize from npm. 4 gets post model. Where does our post model come from? That comes from 5. Pull in data types from sequelize. 6, define a function that gets access to the DB as a param. 7, exports out the post. Then we go back to our db.js. This is now lining up through 7. Then we say 8, use the sequelize import from number 3 to connect to the blog database. 9, give the post access to the DB from 8. Okay, where does this go? This goes through 4 to get back to 10, define the post table and model in the database with the following calls and data types. Then we go back to our db.js and we connect to DB, which is 11, I think. Try and run a query. 13, if it works, print out where connected. And 14, sync the models with the tables in the DB. This sync is what's actually creating the tables for us. I don't know if I mentioned that before. Then we say 13b, nope, 12b. If 12a fails, show an error message. And this is 12a. And then we use that 15, run 11 through 14 above, and 16, export out the model and DB so we can access it in server.js. Pausing. Does anyone have a question on any of this so far? Plush.
What was the need to separate out db.js and post.js?
There isn't. You could put post.js in, you could just take this entire const, copy and paste it into db.js and it would work fine. Over time, though, you're going to have a different model for every different table in your database. So you're going to have a user model, a post model, whatever, a comments model, whatever table. So over time, your db.js is going to get huge and you're going to have to scroll through a couple hundred lines of model code in order to get to the one that you want. So we separated that out, but just like the modular system in React, where you could put it all in one file, you could do the same thing here, but best practice is to say, hey, this is kind of separate code. Let's break that apart.
Will we get a chance to see that more than one models?
Yes, we are going to come back to this project after Ryan is done and learn about associations and how we can actually do a join in Sequelize.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, Ryan's gonna show you guys the user model on Wednesday and Thursday, and then we will go from there. Other questions? This is, give you guys some credit, this is all new tonight, right? This is the first time that we've used an ORM. This is a lot of code to get set up. Now that it is set up, though, we can see kind of the benefits of not having to write out that SQL. And tomorrow, we're going to see how we update a post and how that can be done much more efficiently. Okay. We are done with the database setup. I'm on 16 here. So we go back to server.js, and this is through 16. And we say 17, set up express server to parse JSON body and allow cores. 18, we call this the root endpoint to test that the server is working. We skip all of these until the front end requests them. And we come all the way down to 19, make server listen for requests on 3011. Now, we jump over to the front end. We go down to our home. And in our home, we say, and I'm not going to be as thorough here, but 20 set up state to show our posts when the API call data comes in. 21, when the page first loads. 22, fetch our posts from the backend posts endpoint. 23 lines up with 22 on the front end. And now this is kind of new. Use the post model from number 2 to query the database, get the results, and send them back to the front end in a posts object. Now we say 25, parse the data. 26, use the data to set that into state. 27, loop over each of the posts. 28, make the post component show for each post from the DB and pass the post info in a prop called data. So we're taking this data, we're getting the data, we're parsing it, we're setting it into state. Once state updates, it updates the posts. The post updates and sends it down into each post. Each post, I'm gonna say 20, nope, one, yeah, this works. 29. Use the data from the props in 28 to make the content show. That brings us to 30. use the ID as a param in the route. That brings us to the read, which is going to say 31. Get the ID from the URL. That is going to say 33. When the page loads, oh, come on. Make an API call to get the specific ID from the DB. That does our 34. Get specific post ID using the model from Sequelize. That 35 sends in parses data from 34 on backend. 36 sets into state. And then 37 show the info in state from the DB. Last thing that we're missing in the new post. Oh crap, what was that last number? Post. That was read 37. Okay, so 38 is in our new post. We say 39. God damn it, Max. 37, 38. I can count. I swear I can count. 38 when the form is submitted to make a new post. Gather the form values. Send the form values to the backend via a post request. We 41 get the request from the front end to save a new post to the DB. 42 use the form values from number 39 to make a new post in the DB. And then 44, fitting for Syracuse. 43. 43. After the values are saved into the DB, navigate back to the homepage. That's it. That's all I've got for you. Questions? Plush.
Which of these steps would we have to skip if we already have a table in Beekeeper?
None of them. You would just want to make sure that the model form fields line up with the Beekeeper model. And you also would want to make sure that whatever you called your table also lined up. This is the table name that has to match.
Does it like have to the data types have to match down to like varchar whatever is the number?
String will map to the varchar, so that won't cause any issues. But yeah, that should be the only thing.
Cool. Thank you.
It is already on GitHub Brain. I just uploaded it. Tomorrow, we will learn how to make edit work. We'll learn how to make delete work. We will add in a file upload, so we'll be able to see how we can save an image in. Tomorrow, I don't want to get your hopes up, but might actually be a short class. So we will probably open the door for capstones and give you guys a chance to take everything that you learned in this project and get started on your capstone. You got 6 minutes left of question time tonight. If you have no questions and you want to go read through this code one more time until your eyes bleed, go do that. I will stick around for a minute or two. Otherwise, have an awesome evening.
Max, what exact day do you want capstones to be completed prior to graduation? Is that on the calendar? If it is, I'll look it up. You don't have to answer it.
No, we recommend that you do a code freeze 24 hours before presentations, which means hands off. If it's not working, it's not working. You just noted, to demo around it. But there are certainly students who are making changes at 5:31 on the day of graduation. So there isn't like a hard requirement. We also don't grade capstones. So as long as because we'll do practice presentations the entire week of graduation. And so as long as you have met the requirements of having a API call that's making something show up in the database, that's pretty much the only requirement.
So the capstone isn't graded, but graduation is contingent upon it, right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Plush.
How would we, for example, I'm looking at week 17, day 4 backend file. Like, how would we use the SQL query to put it in the database, like insert into, like selectively?
You don't need to use SQL because you have SQLize. So you would use the post.create and then pass in the object instead of having to write out the insert into and drop in all the template literals.
Well, what if we had to?
There is a there's something called a raw query in SQLize that you can just do in server.js. You can say db.query and then select star from post. So it's singular or plural posts. And console.log out and await. And I believe that should work. Post ABC create. And if I pull this up, you can see the data coming back with the select and the fields and then the rows.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you.
I would not recommend, unless you're doing some kind of like crazy query that SQLize really can't generate for you. I've had to do this maybe 3 times in the 10 years I've been using an ORM. So it's not advised to write a query out manually, but it is possible to do it.
Totally. Yeah, I was just making sure, like, if it was an easier way to do it, because I had that SQL thing set up, so I have to go all over and revamp it. But thank you.
You'll probably want to do that because there are some security vulnerabilities with writing a query manually. I'm going to see if I can find a video on SQL injection, which is the biggest vulnerability, but an ORM has so many benefits that it's worth it.
Totally. Thank you.
Caitlin, you want to define SQL injection?
No. We had to do stuff like that at Raymore for some of the internal applications, but they weren't like public facing, so we weren't really concerned about that.
Let's see if
This outdoor season, did you know Visprin has everything you need to get your small